There was a sealed envelope on my pillow when I got out of the shower. That's it. No name, no return address, not even a smudge of perfume like she used to leave on birthday cards. Just my side of the bed, neatly made, and a white envelope placed dead center, like a gravestone. It wasn't our anniversary. It wasn't my birthday. Nothing special about that morning except the silence. No sound of her humming while making tea, no water running, no keys jingling near the door. Just that envelope. I opened it because, what else does a man do? Call the police? Pray? Inside was a letter. Handwritten. 2 pages. The first line was, "Before you read this, just know I loved you in my own way." What followed? I can't even explain. I don't know how she fit a wrecking ball inside 2 pages of notebook paper. Belinda, my wife of 37 years, confessed to something I can't unsee, unhear, or unknow. She didn't just cheat. She said she lived a parallel life. That there were moments over the years when she slipped away from reality and stepped into a different version of herself. Someone who wasn't a wife, a mother, a neighbor. Someone who didn't belong to me. She said she started small. Solo vacations. Trips with friends. Late-night drives. I always trusted her because why wouldn't I? I was the boring, reliable guy who fixed the garage door and remembered her aunt's birthday. But Belinda? She was performing normalcy, she wrote. A routine she perfected. She described places. Cities I didn't even know she'd been to. And people. Men. Not one. Not even 2. Multiple. Years apart, she said, but always deliberate. One lived in Denver. She met him at a storytelling conference. Another was a carpenter from Tucson. And there was a name she didn't even include, said I already knew him. That made my lungs stop. She said, "If you think hard enough, you'll figure out who he is. He was closest to you. What am I supposed to do with that?" I read it twice. 3 times. She never said she was leaving. Never said she was sorry. The only line that sounded remotely like remorse was, "I wish I could have been only yours, but that version of me never fully existed." Then I noticed what was missing. Her phone, her keys, and her wedding ring. Gone. She didn't walk out. She vanished. No voicemail, no email, no clue where she went. The car was still in the driveway. Her suitcase was still in the closet. But she was gone like a magician's final act. That was 11 days ago. And today, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. A man's voice. He said, "If you're her husband, I think we need to talk. I'm not proud of what I did." I've replayed that message 17 times. Because the voice? I swear to God it sounded like my cousin Max. At first, I didn't call him back. I just sat there, staring at my phone like it was some cursed object. The voice, deep, slightly raspy, uncomfortably calm, kept echoing in my ears. "I think we need to talk. I'm not proud of what I did." It did sound like Max. But the idea of it, of Belinda and Max, felt so insane that my brain refused to fully process it. Max was family. He'd been at our wedding. He helped me renovate our basement. We fished together, watched football together, cried together at my father's funeral. He was the closest thing I had to a brother. And suddenly, I'm supposed to believe he was the man my wife disappeared into? The worst part is a tiny voice inside me said, "Yeah, that would make sense." There were signs I now realize. Little moments, passing glances, too many running into each other incidents when I wasn't around. I once found her phone open to a text from MJ with a heart emoji. She told me it was her friend Marla Jane. I didn't question it, because I trusted her more than I trusted my own instincts. That night, I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey I hadn't touched since my retirement party, sat on the floor like some sad middle-aged cliché, and finally called him back. He picked up on the first ring. "Lowell," he said, as if we were about to talk fantasy football. I didn't respond. There was a silence, not an awkward one, a loaded one. The kind of silence where both people are afraid to say the first honest word. Then he said, "You know, don't you?" "You left me a message," I replied. "You said you weren't proud." More silence. Then, I didn't know it would go that far. He didn't deny it. He didn't stutter. That somehow made it worse. "She's gone, Max," I told him. "Vanished. All she left was a letter. Mentioned someone close to me. Said she loved me in her own way. And now you call." He sighed, like the weight of what he was about to say had been sitting on him for years. "It started 10 years ago," he said. My chest went cold. 10 years. She was different then, he said. I was going through my divorce, remember? Belinda checked in on me. One thing led to another. It was a few times, then it stopped. Then, a few years later, it started again. It wasn't planned. I cut him off. You slept with my wife for 10 years. No, not 10 years straight. You slept with my wife, I repeated, my voice low, barely audible. While I was planning our anniversary, while I was driving her to physical therapy, while I was in the goddamn hospital with pneumonia, you were with her. He didn't deny it. Then he added something I wasn't ready for. I wasn't the only one, Lowell. At that moment, I thought I was going to black out. My vision narrowed. The room felt like it was collapsing. What do you mean? I asked. She told me once that there were others. Not recently. Spread out. Random. Some of them you don't even know. Some of them might be people you've shaken hands with. He sounded ashamed, but not surprised. I hung up. Didn't scream. Didn't break anything. Just sat there in the quiet in my little rented house by the lake, staring at the ceiling. My wife had a whole other life, and she walked around with it inside her like a secret chamber, while I stood next to her for nearly 4 decades believing I was her one and only. That night, I opened her laptop. I'd taken it with me when I left, hoping maybe it held some photos or notes or clues. I didn't expect to find a hidden folder. I definitely didn't expect what was inside. Not photos, not messages, videos. And one of them was dated just 3 weeks ago. She wasn't just confessing her past in that letter. She had been recording it. I hesitated before clicking play. I hovered my finger over the trackpad, staring at the file titled simply for Lowell. There were other videos in the hidden folder too, blandly labeled with dates, initials, and obscure references, but this one was different. This one had my name. The room was silent except for the ticking of a cheap wall clock above the microwave. My pulse sounded louder than the second hand. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I still hoped it was going to be something soft. A message. Maybe even farewell. I don't know why I still clung to the fantasy that this could end gently, with some sense of dignity or closure. But what played on screen shattered that illusion in seconds. The video opened in our bedroom. The camera was handheld, unsteady, and I could tell immediately it wasn't meant to be cinematic or even thoughtful. It was raw, candid. And there she was, Belinda, sitting on the edge of our bed, cross-legged, barefoot, smiling into the lens with a kind of nervous amusement. Her hair was up, her eyes looked tired, but she had that familiar crooked grin she always wore when she was about to admit something slightly inappropriate. She wasn't dressed to seduce. She looked casual, worn, like she had just come home from grocery shopping or something. Okay, she said softly into the mic, letting out a long exhale. If you're watching this, I guess I didn't tell you everything. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. It was anticipation. She leaned in slightly and continued. This isn't a confession. This is more like an acknowledgement of the full picture, because I think you deserve that. Not the version of me you knew, the real one. I leaned back, gripping the arms of the chair. I've lived 2 lives, she said, and maybe that makes me selfish or broken or both. But the truth is, being your wife was only part of who I am. I wasn't built for permanence. I needed change, chaos, discovery. You were the constant, the anchor. But anchors can be heavy. I wanted to pause, to stop watching, but I couldn't. I told you in the letter that I'd been with others, she said, her eyes searching the lens like she was looking straight through me. What I didn't say is that I love some of them. Not like I loved you. Differently. In pieces. But still love. Some of them gave me parts of myself that I couldn't find with you. And I'm sorry. I really, really am. And then she said something that changed everything. Your brother wasn't the first. He just wasn't the last either. My throat closed. I don't have a brother. Not biologically. But when she said it, I realized exactly who she meant. Dennis. My best friend from high school. The man who lived with us for a few months after his divorce. The godfather of our daughter. She had always called him your honorary brother. I thought it was affectionate. Family-like. She meant it literally. She paused the video herself, set the camera down on the nightstand. And for a moment, all I could see was a sideways view of our bedroom, the lamp flickering slightly, the sound of her breathing close to the mic. Then another voice entered the frame. Male. Familiar. Off camera. I couldn't place it at first. But then came a laugh. That damn smirking laugh. It was from someone I hadn't seen in years. Someone who hadn't even crossed my mind since our 25th wedding anniversary. That's when I felt it, my fingers going numb, my chest tightening. My ears started ringing like a siren going off inside my skull. Because the man who spoke next said, "You sure you want to keep that footage?" And Belinda answered, "If he ever finds out, I want him to know it wasn't an accident." That line, that calm, deliberate cruelty, broke something in me I'm not sure will ever heal. The video ended. I sat motionless for I don't know how long. I think the sun had gone down. The shadows on the floor stretched like claws. I didn't cry. Not yet. There was something worse than tears building in my chest. The realization that this woman I shared everything with, every paycheck, every scar, every Christmas, and every silent dinner, had orchestrated a kind of psychological time bomb. She wanted me to find it, not to apologize, to punish. She didn't run away from guilt. She walked away because her story was finished, and I was just now turning the first page. The next morning, I woke up on the kitchen floor. No idea how I got there. My head was resting against a chair leg, the laptop still open on the table, its screen black from inactivity. For a brief second, I hoped I had dreamt it all, that the envelope, the video, the phone call, none of it was real. But when I pushed myself up, I saw her handwriting again. A list she must have written by hand, taped to the back of the screen. A list of names. At least 10. Some just initials. Some full names. Some I recognized. Some I didn't. All under the heading, "The ones you may hear from." I didn't want to know what that meant, but I could not look. I dragged the cursor over the folder marked Archived. At first, it looked like junk. Receipts, scanned IDs, health records. But hidden 3 levels deep was something called Blue Box. I opened it expecting more videos, but there weren't any. What I found was worse. It was a journal, not written like a diary, but organized like some kind of field research. Categories, observations, notes, ratings, dates. My wife had apparently documented her encounters like experiments. Cold, precise, clinical. And here's what destroyed me. She had documented me, too. I found a file labeled Lowell, Observations, year 21 to 35. It started with comments about my habits, routines, things she found endearing or dull or predictable. But then, as the years passed, the tone changed. The entries became more detached. She noted how I never questioned her absences, how I didn't notice when she swapped out her perfume, how I slept through her coming home at 3:12 a.m. One line still echoes in my head. Sometimes I wonder if he loves me, or just loves the peace I give him by never making waves. I stared at that sentence, so long it blurred. Was I truly that dull to her? That invisible? For years, I thought we were just settled, comfortable. I prided myself on not being possessive, on giving her space. I thought that was love. Apparently, to her, it was just indifference disguised as devotion. The next file was titled Denver. I opened it expecting maybe some hotel confirmation, maybe a receipt. Instead, I found a photo, one I'd never seen before. It was Belinda, sitting in a cafe, wearing a red coat I had never seen, smiling across the table at someone who wasn't in frame. The file name was First Love Return. I had no idea who she was with. But in the reflection of the glass window behind her, I saw something that chilled me. A man with a gray beard and a navy blazer. My former boss, Cliff Halley. Cliff had retired 6 years ago. We'd lost touch, but he and I used to be close. I'd brought Belinda to the company holiday party once. He'd danced with her when I left early with a migraine. Now, I couldn't stop wondering, had it started there? There were notes next to the photo. Her words again, in that careful, detached tone. The easiest ones are the ones who already admire me. I don't need to be beautiful, just available. At that point, I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. What kind of person had I married? I thought the lies ended with the cheating. But now I was realizing the cheating wasn't the disease. It was a symptom. The truth was far more disturbing. My wife had been conducting a long-term psychological game, not only on me, but on everyone around her. She never loved me in the way I thought. Maybe not at all. Maybe she simply inhabited love when it suited her. I walked outside barefoot, down to the lake behind the house. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe the horizon. Maybe proof the world was still turning. The air was cold, the water silent. For a long moment, I thought about walking into it, just to feel something different. And then I heard my phone buzz. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Lowell, I know who she was. And I know who she still is. She did it to me, too. No name, no location, just that. I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of some invisible hand pulling me deeper into something I hadn't agreed to enter. And in that moment, I realized Belinda didn't vanish. She transitioned to someone else's life, someone else's reality. And I wasn't the only one who'd been left with a hollow shell of a woman who once smiled across the breakfast table. This story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. I didn't reply to the text immediately. I just sat on the back porch, phone in one hand, whiskey in the other, listening to the dull hum of insects in the grass. The wind had picked up, the kind of wind that doesn't blow through you, it pulls something out of you. I didn't recognize the number. Area code 804. Somewhere in Virginia, I thought. But I had no contacts there. No family. No connections. Yet the message hit like a precision strike. Lowell, I know who she was. And I know who she still is. She did it to me, too. The phrasing wasn't accidental. Who she still is. Not was. That meant this person believed Belinda hadn't disappeared, hadn't run, hadn't broken. She had simply shifted. And she was out there continuing whatever it was she had started decades ago. I finally replied, "Who is this?" The typing dots popped up instantly. "I'm not ready to say, but I need to meet you. It's about her. About the others. About how she does it." That word, others, made me freeze. I wanted to throw the phone into the lake. I wanted to run back into the house and pretend none of this ever happened. But I knew I wouldn't, because I was already too deep. I had already tasted the ugly truth, and it was like rust in my mouth. I couldn't unfeel it. So I agreed. Against every instinct. Against logic. I told him to meet me the next day, 2 p.m., at the Rusted Lantern Diner off the interstate. I picked that place because it was neutral, public, and I hadn't been there since our daughter Esme was 12. Back when life was still painted in comforting illusions. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner booth, hood up, looking like a man who hadn't slept in a week. He stood when he saw me. I recognized nothing about him. Early 40s maybe. Pale, thin, hands trembling just slightly. But when he said my name, there was a kind of fragile relief in his voice. "Lowell," he said. "She mentioned you once." I didn't sit down right away. I studied his face. He looked like someone carrying a weight he couldn't put down, even if he wanted to. "Who are you?" I asked. "My name's Ethan," he said, "and I was her student." In a way, that made no sense. Belinda was a librarian. She didn't teach. But Ethan leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. She ran a group, a private one, for men. She didn't advertise it. It was word of mouth, exclusive. They called it the Distance Project. I blinked. "What the hell is that?" "It's not what you think," he said. "It wasn't romantic. At least, not at first." She claimed it was psychological research. She told us it was about intimacy erosion, that she was studying how people detach emotionally when given small pushes over long periods. She said it was for a book, a theory, but it wasn't. I felt my skin go cold. She would interview us, make us write reports, personal things, secrets. Then she'd test us, see how far she could push boundaries. At first, it was harmless. Dinners, conversations, moments of silence that went on too long. Then came the letters, the tasks. He stopped himself. His face went pale. One day, she told me she had been married the entire time, that her husband had no idea. She made it sound like, "You were just part of the process." I nearly stood up. She used me in some kind of social experiment. Ethan nodded slowly. It was never just about cheating. That was just the visible part. What she really did was erase people. She made you question what was real. She made you doubt your own emotional compass. Some of the men in the group fell apart. One of them changed his name. Another moved to Brazil. I've been living in my car for the past 5 months. I didn't believe him until he pulled out a notebook, a thick, weathered one with a red rubber band wrapped around it. Inside were entries, diagrams, quotes, drawings, photos of Belinda, smiling, nodding, writing. And then he handed me a page with my name on it. Case L03. Long-term stability partner. No rupture observed. Phase 4 never initiated. Phase 4. I whispered. He shook his head. I don't know what it means. But if she's gone now, I think she's starting it. With someone else. I sat back, completely drained. Everything I thought I knew had collapsed into ash. My marriage, my identity, even my pain, none of it felt real anymore. I wasn't just a man betrayed by his wife. I was a variable in a design I never consented to. Then Ethan pulled out a small flash drive. This is the last footage I had before she disappeared. It's not just her talking. It's a conversation. With a man I think you know. I took it. I didn't want to, but I did. Why are you giving me this? I asked. He stood up. Because you need to know what she's capable of. And because she always said you were the one she couldn't break. And then he walked out. I looked down at the flash drive in my palm. And in that moment, I realized I was never her partner. I was her control subject. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I just sat at the edge of the bed, the flash drive in my hand like it weighed 50 pounds. My mind replayed everything Ethan had said over and over again. The distance project. Phase 4. You were the one she couldn't break. What did that even mean? Was I a failure in her eyes? A success? A control subject in some twisted behavioral study that had spanned nearly 4 decades of my life. It was nearly 5 in the morning when I finally slipped the flash drive into the USB port. The laptop whirred to life, the screen glowing cold blue in the darkness. It auto-launched a folder called Observations Final. There were several files, audio logs, images, PDF scans, but one stood out, a video file with a timestamp from 3 weeks ago. Same day, she disappeared. It was titled Phase 4 Initiation. I took a deep breath and hit play. The screen flickered. The camera seemed to be positioned on a table, pointed upward at an angle, probably hidden. 2 people came into frame. One of them was Belinda. Calm, collected, her hair up, that same emotionally unreadable expression she always wore when she needed control. Across from her sat a man with his back mostly to the camera. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew the voice. It was my old therapist, Dr. Keats. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 8 years. I had stopped therapy when I retired, thinking I didn't need it anymore. Apparently, I was wrong. Very, very wrong. Belinda leaned in, speaking softly. So we begin now. He responded, You're sure? This isn't too risky. I've tested the threshold, she said. His mind's more resilient than I thought, but his framework is built on assumptions. If we collapse those, the identity will crumble. It took me a moment to understand they were talking about me. She went on, He believes pain defines depth, that if something hurts, it must be meaningful. We'll take that away. Keats nodded. And the memory protocol? I've already begun seeding false anchors, she replied. He'll start doubting his own recollection by next week. By the time he questions reality, we'll have full collapse. I paused the video. I couldn't breathe. She was planning my mental undoing. Not just betrayal, not just distance. This was something far more elaborate. She had anticipated that I would find the letters, the footage, the contacts, even Ethan. This entire unraveling was not incidental. It was engineered. I resumed the video, watching in growing horror as she laid out her timeline for emotional deconstruction. Specific triggers, reference points she had embedded over years. Things I had dismissed, a phrase she'd whispered during a nightmare, a recurring sound she played on her stereo, a song she always put on after arguments. Every one of them was a switch. She'd wired me with subconscious cues like I was some kind of walking experiment. She's building a void, Keats said near the end, and he won't know how to fill it. The screen went black. I just sat there, frozen. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't remember how. Everything around me felt staged, like the mug on the counter had been placed there for my reaction. The calendar, the framed wedding photo, the scent of her perfume still faint in the hallway. It all felt like props in a set designed to hold me in place. And then something even worse happened. As I closed the laptop, my phone buzzed. Another message. Different number this time. You've entered phase 4. She won't stop now. No name. No explanation.